Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a disassembly video for you on this little guy right here. This is the Eikonic Knives Fairwinds. Actually, I'm going to try something a little bit different, because this is in the category of knives that are good enough to say something about, but not good enough to say that much about. It is an absolutely fine knife, in the sense that 2023 has brought us hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of knives that are fine. They're good to go, they work. I could hand this to somebody and it could be their everyday companion for the rest of their lives, but there's nothing necessarily, oh my god, incredible about it, especially at that price point. And so rather than, I figure it's worth saying something, and I figure it's worth doing the disassembly so that folks have that piece of information, but I'm not super interested in doing a full review on it because, well, it's fine. So, this is, we're just going to do that, and so I'll give you a couple of quick impressions afterwards, but for the most part, that's my review, it's absolutely fine. It's a $74 knife, by the way, as of right now, looking at their website. I'm confused, we'll start off with on the disassembly front, because it looks like I should have to take out this screw and this screw, and then the pivot here. There is a companion to this screw here, but it appears to be under the G10. And so there are two ways this could go down. First way is this is a flip-flop disassembly where I have to take out these two screws and this guy over here. A little tiny bit annoying, but not too terrible. In a worse scenario, I actually have to remove the clip screws, this screw, and the screw under the liner. I'm going to start off in the flip-flop mode because that's the less annoying approach. And I kind of hope they're not being so annoying, but it is very possible that I'm going to have to go back in there, remove the clip and everything like that. So I'm going to see if we can do this just by taking this apart, and nope, that was wrong screwdriver. Looks like we have a T10 here in the pivot. Holy thread lock, I bet, man. Yowza. This thing has been thread locked like freaking crazy. I'm getting it eventually, but oh boy, what the heck is wrong with this thing? I think they might have just used so much thread locker. And now it's trying to push the pivot out from the other side. I just don't understand how this thing is being built here. It's like the pivot screw is captive. Okay, so that's come off. Oh, that's dumb. Okay, it's not dumb in the sense that, like, it doesn't work, but it is dumb. This part here is the part that has the... So the screw, per se, is this part. And the pivot here is the part attached to the screw head. So when I'm unscrewing it, what I'm actually doing is slowly rotating the pivot until the screw falls out. I don't know why they had to do it that way. That's a really weird construction method. I don't get it. I don't need to. But yeah, yeah. Just a little tiny annoyance, right? And in a world where there are so many knives that are D2 liner locks coming from overseas, I don't feel like that's a super strong competitive advantage, to put it nicely, right? Like, you can't be doing anything but excellence at this stage. As I've said before, excellence is the lowest of bars that we need to be worrying about. So, anyways, but that was what was going on. It wasn't actually thread locked. It was just that there was a lot of friction with this pivot here. And it still feels slightly, like, stuck. Maybe what they... Oh, God. That would be even worse. It could actually be that this barrel is a separate piece that they have red Loctited it onto the screw in the back here, with the understanding that this part can't loosen. And then it would just rotate freely. Either way, I'm not impressed. There are many ways that you can construct a budget folding knife. That's certainly one of them. Like I said, the knife itself, and nice big ceramic bearings, that's good at least. But, the knife itself is fine, but oh boy. That's just kind of annoying. right? Is it going to be a big deal? No, absolutely not. And again, I want to be clear that this could absolutely be somebody's very favorite knife, and they could carry it for all their life and be happy. But at the same time, excellence is the lowest bar. So, especially for a $70 D2 liner lock coming from China, you gotta really be pushing it. And this ain't really pushing it. One thing that is worth noting about this guy, and by the way, I'm just starting the reassembly here because there just ain't a whole lot to this. But one other thing that's worth noting about this is actually being designed by a very well-known designer. It's one of Eiconic's little shticks, is that they're working with pretty reasonably known designers. And this is actually by HEA Designs, who are, well, they've done a number of things. The most recent that I've been checking out lately is actually this folding comb right here, which feels a little bit more like HEA. Like, this is a fine little product, but it's doesn't feel quite as HEA as some of HEA's other stuff. But anyways, it's so it's got that pedigree there. I don't know whether the internals were designed by HEA, by Sam. It's not a trick I've seen him use before. And very often with these kinds of collaborations, it can be, and again, I have no evidence to believe this is or isn't the case in this particular case, but it can often be the case that the factory kind of determines the internals and mechanism. The designer sends a sketch more than anything. So, you know, who knows? Sam might not have even been aware that that was how they were doing things. But either way, we are putting this guy back together. I have lubed the detent ball, path. Okay, I'm going to go on ahead just to make my life a little bit, remove 1 degree of freedom here. Go ahead and put in the tail screws here first. That way I'm not worried about the thing falling apart in my hands. So, yeah, and then we'll figure out how to do this pivot here. By the way, if you're curious about any of the tools I'm using, and I'm sorry if I've already made this plug here, I think I haven't, but go ahead and check out nickshabazz.com/tools, where I have a full list of everything I recommend for knife maintenance, with some affiliate links. Do keep in mind, but you clearly see me use this stuff, so it's not like I don't use this stuff. Anyways, I digress. So now it's time to do this, and one thing I'm going to highlight is that there's this little shelf right here, and there's a little cutout on the pivot itself. I want to make sure those two things align. So what I'm going to do is hold my finger such that we can see the little shelf guy, is right over the little shelf guy. And then I'm going to come to the other side here and just start turning. God, this is so unpleasant. Wow. Okay, but I am making slow progress here. Can I rotate this by hand? Yeah, I can kind of tighten it in to start. The problem with this, okay, well, there are many problems with this, but one of them is that I'm going to have to try and make sure that shelf is in the right position at a certain point here. It should click into place and, like, stop. This part should stop rotating at a certain point. Oh, boy. Am I? I don't know, actually, whether I'm in place here. Yeah, that feels good. Okay, ultimately, I think I might have over-tightened that a little. There we go. Now we have substantial blade play. Let's tighten it back up again. It's the little tiniest bit of blade play, so let me put a little tiny bit more pressure. There we go. No play. Let me just tighten up the back screws here. Well, the action is definitely nicer. Centering is still right about where it is. Yeah, so anyways. That is the disassembly. That's how you take this guy apart and service it. That is really counterintuitive. I'm kind of glad I did this because most overseas made, D2 liner locks do not need any kind of expertise. Once you've done one of them, you've done them all. This one apparently did. So, what are my overall thoughts on this guy? How do I feel about it? Ultimately, like I said, I still maintain that this is a fine knife. This is a knife that I'm sure somebody loves, and I'm sure lots of people could love. If they got one for free, this would be a lovely thing for them, right? Because it is a fine little piece. It carries well. It's got a nice clip, etc. And then the ergonomics of it are actually quite good in my relatively small hands. I have a full 4-finger grip on this guy, and, you know, that's for a relatively small knife here, coming in under 3 inches worth of blade. And, you know, it's a little bit on the thicker side, but that's what happens when you get this sandwich construction with relatively thick G10. But, you know, overall it works. The clip looks like it wouldn't work that well ergonomically, but my particular hand, actually, I just don't feel it. And I really do like this lock bar access here. They've done a very nice job of making sure that you've got plenty of lock bar access, allowing this guy to open and close quite nicely. I gotta say, the deployment is quite good. So, on the whole, and the edge, by the way, comes out to a nice, reasonably thin edge. And, you know, it works. It is a fine daily carry option, right? Like I said, if somebody says to me, Nick, I am in love with the Eikonic Fairwind here, then absolutely, yeah, give it a shot, right? Why not? However, if you are not in love with it, I'm not necessarily sure I would recommend this knife over anything else, right? This is fine. Right? There is nothing here that is completely over the top, like, yes, right? And there are a couple of annoyances to me. One of them is that you have an option for an orange handle with a regular blade, or you get the blue with the DLC blade. Whereas I think for a lot of people, the blue with the silver blade might actually be the more common option. This is, by the way, a CJRB pyrite here, which is probably a knife I'd recommend over this one if you're looking for something in this vicinity, although that's a button lock and whatnot. Anyways, so that's kind of a weird set of choices to start with there. I also have to say that disassembly was not the most pleasant thing ever, right? This pivot thing works. It's fine. You can do it. But it just made the whole process a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. It felt like I mean, maybe there was a solution they were solving there, trying to get away from the flip-flop disassembly, but it made it much more annoying than your average D2 liner lock is to deal with. And given the results, the proof, well, is, of course, in the pudding, and the results are good. It cleaned up nicely, and it was fine, again, but it's just a little bit more annoying than a number of the other options here. And then finally, the other big issue here, and I don't think it's a big issue, actually, but the other thing that keeps this from being something I'm more enthusiastic about is that price, $75. And mind you, that's not a big price, right? But at the same time, honestly, it feels like equivalent to a number of things that are in the $50 range, or even in the $40 range, right? If you hold this guy up next to your Ontario Rat 2 in D2 steel, it's like, are they really different? No. But $25 snuck in here someplace. And, I do appreciate them using and working with, well-known designers. I think that's a nice shtick. And I think if you're looking at this and going, oh, yes, this is beautiful, I want this, then by God, you're probably going to want this, right? Then you're going to spend that extra $25 and you're going to be happy about it. But to me, the design is fine. But it's not anything worth writing home about, and it's certainly not anything worth $25 more, right? So ultimately, my feeling on this guy is relatively meh, right? It could go either way. It's nice. It works. It's a fine pocket knife. And if you really like this design and you're willing to pay that little bit of extra and put up with a little bit of pain in the neck for disassembly, then fine. Whatever. Go for it. Have fun. You're going to like it. It's an enjoyable knife. But if you are not feeling it, if you are not, really in love with this particular design, or you're not in love with this color scheme, you're not in love with some particular element of it, for $75, I think you can do just about as good and still have a little extra cash in your pocket. So there we go. Ultimately, that's kind of where I land on it. It is fine, right? There is not a whole lot to complain about with it, but in some ways, these days, with the competition being as strong as it is, well, I've said before and I'll say it again, excellence is the lowest bar, and I'm not necessarily sure this meets that bar. So that's why it's just getting this disassembly quick discussion kind of thing. Hope this is interesting to you. Let me know if this format is interesting for you for things that don't quite match, meet the level of expectation. And most of all, I hope that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of the day and that you found this review iconic. Bye, everybody.